power was believed to be knowledge and experience, then believe me, this state here today resonates and vibrates with exuberance. Thank you for all the panelists who are here. I welcome you all on this panel for the panel discussion, which aspires to take the national education policy and tries to understand its implications on the global impact. When I was thinking of starting this session, I thought as to what and how I need to begin the deliberation on. So the first thing that struck me was the Tagore's word, Rabindranath Tagore's words, which I would like to recite here. But before I begin, I would like to welcome Colonel Venkat here, who is connecting us through a virtual interface. We welcome you, sir. Thank you. So, the audience, can I have a round of applause? Sir is joining us virtually. Thank you.
Yes, it's fine, it's fine.
Thank you. So I think now we are settled. So we welcome all the panelists here. So I'm going back with the words of Tagore to begin. Where the mind is without fear and where the head is held high, where knowledge is free, there are no fragments due to narrow domestic walls. Into that heaven, my father, let my country awake. Let my country awake. At the end of the 73rd independence of India, the NEP 2020 was formalized, which somewhere creates a cornerstone for education as one of the mediums to achieve the Tagore's India. And believe me, for a man like Tagore to think and aspire for an India today, and it took a period to be able to make it into a formulation, is indeed commendable. Such is the visionaries that India has always had. The education system of India has been one of the most historic, legacy-based, which has always cultured value with education. It aspires not to just fill the empty vessels, but illuminate a feeling of light. And believe me, a student once awakened with light will never go back to darkness. We have had scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, the Upanishads. We've had the historic legacy universities like Takshila and Nalanda, who've reverberated with multidisciplinary education, futuristic education, an education which was so empowered that used to call upon people from around the world to come to India to witness the beauty of learning and education. But alas, the few years in the last have seen the personality of Indian education go through a little back, or I would say something was missing. So our session today is just to appreciate, applaud, welcome, think as to such beautiful piece of art crafted for the NEP, how it can be implemented, not just by the educators, but even for you students who are sitting there, because adaptability to change is the only way that we can make the NEP become a success. Keeping this momentum, vigor, and a space for reformation, acceptance, and many pitfalls and challenges in the near future to accomplish, we kickstart the session. So to begin with, I'm sure the audience are not very aware as to what the NEP instaurs. So on a quick discussion, I would like maybe if each of the panelists here could bring maybe one piece of NEP as a policy which you feel has touched you and can make a difference for the students, especially the student community. So this would help us to bring the community of the students aware of the beauty that lies beyond the policy framed. So, if I may just start with Colonel Venkat, because he's isolated with distance, so that, but I'm sure your ideas will bring us close. So, sir, if you would like to begin, we will begin with you, so that if in case we lose you because of connectivity, we still have heard you, sir.
Students' holistic development, it talks about multidisciplinary, accessible education, it talks about inclusive education to include access, equality, equity, affordability, quality. It talks about promotion of Indian regional languages, and it talks about plethora of other activities all encompassed together to take India at the global hub of education, to revive our past glory, which we had once upon a time. So enough said about what is NEP all about. I think what we need to be discussing is how to implement these aspects now which is written in the policy. At the government and at the ministry level, already multiple initiatives have happened, multiple alignment of the existing activities have taken place. New activities have been included so that each one of them are seen towards the implementable, and a very strict timelines are being followed at every level to ensure that we are seen implementing it. Because the presenter has said that we should be discussing one aspect which has not touched the most, and then let us, each one of us, talk one, and then subsequently we can broaden the horizon. The one aspect which I personally feel which becomes one of the very, very important, more so very relevant today, is connected to the students, and that becomes an access. If we use the word access and we call it as a larger subset of inclusive education, then I think that becomes one of the most important activities, wherein we connect multiple students which otherwise could not be given education in due course of time to be able to take education. We connect those sections of the society which by the National Education Policy goes by the terminology of SEDG, socially economically deprived groups. We connect to that section of the society. We connect to those sections of the society who otherwise were called as marginalized society. We give an opportunity to those students. We get in touch with those students who had to endure the dropout. For whatever reason, we connect to them. So that multiple activities leads to access, and when I talk of inclusive education, it is but obvious that we should talk of what is access, what is equity, what is equality, what is autonomy, what is accountability, and then what is affordability and quality. This is 7-8 points which figure into this. And each one of you, believe me, is already somewhere in this. All that is required is we need to be joining hands, we need to be coming together, and that is how we need to be moving forward. Because I am representing AICTE, I should also be taking this opportunity to inform to you in next 5 to 10 minutes max as to what has been AICTE be doing on this specific topic, because this is a topic I just chose to speak. So in access, the multiple activities which AICTE has done is number one thing which happens to be that as of today, the National Education Policy talks about promotion of regional languages, providing education to regional languages, not only in school education, but also in higher education. At AICTE, we have allowed for additional supernumerary street of 30/60 in every department, provided they have got accreditation for the purpose of taking on additional seats to impart education in regional languages. The activities which are commensurating with it going is, we have taken up for all online NPTEL MOOCs courses. They are in the process of being translated into 12 regional languages. And simultaneously, another very important activity which is going on happens to be original technical book writing and then translation into 12 regional languages. So these two activities together are going on. We are likely to be doing it in next 15-20 days, and we would then be in a position to present the first year undergraduate and diploma books to the children in regional languages. To commence with, we are doing it in Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Gujarati, Bengali. These are the languages which are taken on in phase 1. And then as that case progresses, we will be moving forward. That is called as, giving an opportunity to students to education. For those who could not do education because of that language barrier which comes in immediately after the school education. Another very important aspect of this happens to be the point which we talk as equality. There should be no difference between any students for the purposes of caste, creed, culture, religion, or as a financial status. That is what is called as equality. So towards equality, what at AICTE we do is that we ensure that the number of financially funded scholarships which are applicable to students does not have any difference or any differentiation between anyone. We have two very important scholarships and schemes that go by the name of Pragati and Saksham. Post NEP announcement, we increased the scholarships from 2,000 students for degree and diploma to 5,000 each for degree and diploma. So that makes it 5,000 degree students, 5,000 diploma students, and we give at AICTE 50,000 rupees to each student. They happen to be girl child. So in the bargain, we also have a promotion of education towards the girl children by providing them a scholarship, 50,000 per year for 3 years. That is Pragati and Saksham. That is to increase the number of scholarships. Then comes his equity. Equity by definition happens to be, that understanding the special needs of everyone. No two human beings are born alike. Everybody comes with a little bit of special requirements. That understanding that special requirement and then going about to address that special requirement. AICTE understood this thing as part of the national education policy, and we constituted two very committees to work on this aspect. There were two categories of children. We decided that the first category is called as the Divyang category, other category is called as students requiring with learning disorders. There are two different categories. Divyang comes under physically handicapped, and students with learning disorders comes under dyslexic 6 category of children who have difficulty in picking up. So having constituted these two committees, we have given a recommendation to the Government of India Ministry for inclusion of these aspects also in the inclusion, that is the inclusion access part of the students chapter which is there in the NEP. From our own side, we have taken it upon ourselves that one institute per state, to start with 15 states, AICTE would be funding to make it as a model institute, having everywhere with all infrastructure, faculty trained, classroom, the allied infrastructure and facilities to enable every student who is having a special need or a special requirement to be able to pursue his or her education. Then comes his autonomy. As national education policy says, and it's so very rightful, that the futuristic multidisciplinary higher educational institutes will be given graded autonomy. So we are basically looking forward as autonomous institutes in the time to come. If autonomy be the future, autonomy is nothing but freedom. The freedom is in academics, freedom is in administration, freedom is in finance. Towards the students aspect, finance becomes a little bit considerable point which we need to be addressing. AICTE has come forward that 1, increase in the number of scholarships, 2, increase in the amount, 3, broaden the horizon of the scholarships, 4, there is a case in point that the fee structure can also be regulated, can be given a thought of. If online education in whichever percentages today, tomorrow continue to be there, today being 40% credit which can be retained by online education, whatever be there, then there is a strong case in point that the fee structure commensurating to the time that the student undergoes online can be taken thought of. It can be considered, that's what exactly speaking comes under affordability, make the education system that much more affordable. Also taking a cue from the national education policy towards online and ODL, AICTE has already allowed even the technical education now for the first time to be taken in an online education. To start with, we have started with logistics, transport, tourism, MCA, and certain engineering disciplines such as artificial intelligence and data sciences, which do not require hands-on experience. This can be taken in online. This can be taken in ODL. That is what is called as, contributory factors towards affordability of the education. And then comes most important aspect, that aspect happens to be the quality of education. Everybody has different understanding of quality. Everybody has different understanding of the definition of quality. The definition of quality, to the best of our understanding, happens to be attaining certain benchmarks at standard parameters, which after having attained, we deem to have qualified to that quality. And when we speak of quality in education, it is nothing but accreditation. So we have multiple initiatives and schemes wherein we push institutes towards accreditation, and this is also being done to give a quality education to the students. What we look at the end of the day through this particular point of students, that is the access point covered in these few points which I found correct to express at this point of time, is to enable each and every student getting educated, each and every student getting opportunity to study. Each and every student, whether it is school education or higher education, should get a chance to study. In fact, AICTE has also offered AICTE has offered its own infrastructure to the school education, because of now that we have a common point of contact between the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Skill. We have offered our infrastructure, laboratory and facilities of AICTE approved institute, which can be used by the students to undergo skill-based activities and courses post the education hours of the higher educational institutes. There we will be connecting with the dropouts. So we bring back dropouts into the mainstream education, give them an opportunity, 3 months, 6 months strong courses, wherein they can take these courses and at least do some kind of an employment capable enough at that age, whatever is deserving.
If I may just intervene
at the higher education level, suffice to say that we have option of students to come back into the education like the way it was being spoken. That is exactly once again goes under the opportunity of students to coming back into the education when we talk of multiple entry and exit, though it falls outside the mandate of access, but correct to say that it's an opportunity to student once again to come back. And at the end, ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate aim of all this activity happens only to be one. We need to make our students capable enough. We need to be making our students professionally in such a manner that our students are capable not only of generating employment, but our students of actually speaking, representing India at world forum, at the world class, and that is where exactly speaking the Indian education system will be seen as one of the most wanted education system. Indian education system, only based on the activities which we provide as facilitators to the institutions and to the students, is something that which is so desired. That is what is the implementable aspects as to the multiple points which keep coming in NEP. I think I have slightly gone ahead of my mandated time, and I would now much rather be on listening as to my fellow esteemed colleagues, much capable than what we are out here to be speaking. It's much better to listen to many more people qualified on the subject. Thank you. Thanks a lot. With this, I rest my initial opening remarks, and I will be in the listening.
Thank you, Mr. Venkat. Thank you so much. I think you've given the impetus and the momentum that was required for the session, because it gave us a clarity and a foundation to what the NEP is. And in some manner, you have introduced the entire NEP in a comprehensive format for all of us. So thank you for this discussion, sir. So paving the path from here, I think I would have to redirection the momentum again. So now that sir has already introduced what are the nitty-gritties of the NEP, and it is from the best source that we could have got. Popli ma'am, if we were to begin with you, there is a very important integral part of the NEP is that we are moving away from the root learning more towards the learner-centric, that is the student-centric learning rather than the instructor-led learning in the process of the new education system. On a very generic note, if you were to believe like a system revamps itself, because the history has seen that mostly it has been an instructor-led education in India. So if this game changer has to come in, where the students have to be the recipients of change and learner centric is the requirements for new learning. How do you see the space for this evolution to happen in this new system? And what is it that you expect that the students and the authorities should be doing in terms of educational institutions in order to bring this symbiotic relationships?
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank Lloyd for inviting us over here, and in a very wonderful session, inaugural sessions, where the entire concept of a NEP is very briefly mentioned about it, and you've asked a very relevant questions. And let me just go to the gist of it. So when we talk about this NEP, the purpose, when we talk about it, is about the creating a quality institutions, and we talk about the culture of innovations, and we called about the highly skilled workforce. So when we talk about high skilled workforce, why this concept has been coming is that we are seeing that there is something is missing in a current policy. And this policy, after coming framed after say 1986, now from 2020, it's almost a 34 years. So in 34 years, they are also talking about a lot of many things, which can make it possible, like insteading a single regulator systems, make it more inclusive. And also, from a school education also, we have been talking the concept of 5+3+3+2. So that means, you have to spend some basic years to have a fundamental learning. And once you reach that fundamental learning, and I think Colonel Venkat also mentioned very explicitly about also the introduction of a third language, that many times that you had not been able to learn or adapt because of the language barriers. So that has been also covered and been addressed by this NEP. But when we talk about the implementations, probably when we talk about implementation is something around 2040, because we have to bring all those kind of a changes. And the questions which you have asked, we can't address it right now, because still we are in 2021. So to implement the process where it's not an instructor learner, but at depending upon that what students wants to learn, is this will happen, but this will be very slow kind of a progress, because when we talk about quality teaching, there are a lot to be changed, there are a lot of issues today. When we talk about the institutes, we have number of institutes and number of universities which has been coming up, but there is a lot of gap. Even you don't even have a teachers when you talk about the quality teachers. So there is 40% or vacancies, or a 60% vacancies. And when we talk about the teachers learning or FDPs, this has been started when they are thinking of learning. But when we are also talking about the employable workforce, so when you talk about employability, then you have to look into where is the gap in an industry. You talk about pharma industry, maybe 10 years back there is a lot of scope in basically industries, but today you see this is saturated. So we talk post COVID, we have seen that the healthcare or a community where you need more workforce, but today still neither the students are prepared nor teachers are prepared. And so employability in industry is still a question mark. But when we talk about that, the student based and the instructor based, we are talking about unmet need. So as basically when in a strategy in a pharmaceutical industry, if I draw a parallel, we develop a product depend upon unmet medical need. What physician needs and what the patient needs it. So similarly in educations, we are progressing towards that what the society needs and then what students wants to do it. And this will be possible only when they have a basic education, so they are prepared, they are being given right. You are talking about equality, you are also talking about the gender gap as well. We talk about that there are not many women who are being educated, so we wanted to reduce that particular gap also. So government has to do a lot basically, where we see that when the people are educated, then we can talk about when the society around is educated, at least a 70% literate or 80% literate, or when 100% literate, then they know what is the demand, what they want, what is the gap. There is a more understanding, so there is a more pressure. So I'll leave it over here.
So, Professor Popli, you've touched a very, very important association. I would like to say that the question of learner-centric, you have very beautifully aligned it with professional and vocational education, because at the end of the day, a student is learning for employability and skillability. And somewhere being taken care the fact that learner is the epicenter to be able to have vocational and professional education, which you were trying to somehow redirect. I would now like to redirect your discussion towards the other panelists, that now this new NEP policy aspires to have vocational and professional education included as a major skill set in higher education, which was not likewise met. As a result of it, there has always been a big divide between the academia industry, because at the end of the day, the students were not accommodative into the environment which they used to face in the industry. How do you think that this indulgence of a community of vocational skill set enhancement and together with professionalism for higher education be able to combat this divide between the academia and the institutions and the industry per se? So I leave it open to the panel. Anybody who would like to focus their thoughts? Uh, so, Nanda sir would like to.
Good afternoon, all of you. I was reading somewhere, Harvard Business School has underlined that so far as the employability is concerned, 15%, 15% of your technical skill will contribute to your employability, whereas 85% is dependent upon your soft skills. Now, this percentage may be challengeable. I mean, somebody may say that no, 50% is technical skill, 50% is soft skill, but then it definitely underlines the significance of soft skills. And since the day when NEP has been announced, we have been pondering over it. At least what I could see personally, that since we are regulated by Pharmacy Council of India and also partly by AICTE, except for communication skills, English, and some management subject and environment sciences, we do not have any subject which is focusing on soft skills. So I would call upon the students, I would call upon the teachers in particular to please think over it, that if you really want to increase your employability, you will have to develop your soft skills, and in particular the teachers also. I believe AICTE has been funding a lot for some various workshops on soft skills and so on, but then it is our responsibility also to learn these skills. And I would like to highlight one thing. We cannot be insulated from others. Like in the past, we have been telling that our course is regulated by PCI. We cannot have a change in the syllabus. But what the NEP has really introduced is, IIT Bombay has introduced a 4-year degree course known as LACE. It's a liberal arts, science and engineering. Delhi University is also introducing a 4-year subject. What the NEP is really focusing is breaking the barrier. An engineering student should also have some value-based education, soft skills, arts. So do we have scope? So I would say there are two things. One, how much our regulator is allowing, and secondly, how much we are prepared. Are we prepared? Are we prepared mentally? So I would call upon all the students, educators here to look upon the other disciplines and draw some inspiration or something useful from them. Particularly, I would say the uh, environmental education. Okay, it is to some extent covered, but then value-based education, even like in the recent years, we had a pandemic. There was online teaching. Now, ma'am, I would just take a liberty and ask all the teachers and students here, how many of us are conversant with the use of Jamboard? Raise your hands. How many of us are conversant with the use of Jamboard, where a teacher can write some equation or write his notes or write his comments and the students can also interact with them? So if this is the status of our preparation, then it simply reflects that yes, we are lacking and we have to gear up. We should not look upon AICTE or we should not be dependent upon Pharmacy Council of India, but rather we should take inspiration from other courses or other disciplines and try to learn the things and try to develop. Like pandemic was a challenge for all of us, but those who have excelled, I think all the pharmacy teachers somehow they were made to deliver online, something which probably we were not doing it. But then why can't we take it as an opportunity, and why can't we use it as a useful tool? So this is my message to all the teachers and all the educators here, that we should focus on soft skills, communication skills, and don't look upon that this should be a part of your subject. There can be there is ample scope outside the subject. You can have some add-on courses, or at least you can develop many of these skills on your own.
Professor Nanda, I would like to just state a very important aspect that you have touched, and that is that the new NEP policy does not see any boundaries and does not see silos in subject. A student who wants to do science can take in a little of commerce and arts also to be able to do a multidisciplinary kind of a studies, so that he is oriented in areas which he wants to expertise. And this breaks a very big boundary that we had between commerce, science, arts, humanities, etc., which always inhibited a student from the boundaries of learning, which the new NEP policy says that you can make a bucket of your own portfolio of learnings depending upon what your likings and inclinations are. So, a very beautiful aspect that you have originated from your discussion. So, I would now be asking Dr. Bhatnagar, sir, that, sir, if we as students and educators are able to give this kind of an education and knowledge to the students, where the students very beautifully make their bouquet of learnings from a commerce to maybe a little scientific aspect to social sciences, etc. However, if the industry is not ready for the kind of jobs which, as educators and students, we are preparing them, where do we see a growth of mutuality between the students, the teachers, and the industry? So, if you could highlight as to the challenges are many, it has to be a very collaborative change from all aspects. So, I think if you would like to throw any light on this, it'll just, if it's like a black box, I'm sure, but if you could throw a little light, what do you feel about it, sir?
If I look at my life spent in late school and early college, that's about 40 years back, there are the three basic differences I see from today as per this NEP 2020 is concerned. First is we were fed on information. Yes, we were given knowledge, but frankly that was on our own accord. Or अगर मैं to share a secret, whether it was 10th, 12th, MBBS, MD, it was our cramming the information we learned is got us marks and we pass the exams. Knowledge, yes, it is something like a sea over which this seabed is made, but it was never tested. Now, with advent of internet and other things, where not information is on your fingertips, 24 hours a day, more information than you can chew, you can digest. I feel, and there's a provision in NEP that instead of going for information, they can go in knowledge. Half the time, they can discuss. Knowledge is basically nothing but connecting the dots of your information. And knowledge is testing it out yourself, testing it out in lab, testing it through discussions, mind experiments, that what you have learned or what you have been informed, is it correct, or how much correction is there. So there is a time now to change from information model to knowledge model, and in fact it will take probably 30-40% of the time, and then innovation comes in because you have time to discuss. Once you discuss, innovation is easier to come. Second is, as Madam said, as a student I was never given a choice. मुझसे कभी पूछा नहीं गया कि तुम क्या चाहते हो पढ़ना. कोई 5 सब्जेक्ट होते थे. We either excelled in that, we didn't excel in that. We got good marks, we got bad marks, nobody bothered. In fact, we also didn't bother. So now with this system, one has a freedom to follow his mind and his heart. It gives you more freedom, but it also gives you more responsibility. Because if you fail, you cannot blame the systems or your parents. So it gives a lot of freedom. You are like birds, you are land animals, but with more responsibility, I think you are better better place to face the world. But she says, uske baad kya? Employability. So I feel that NEP 2020 is going to make that worse. At least in the few years later on, the thing will be there, because now hinterland of India, that is rural India, semi-urban area, they are going to, I won't say flood, but their aspirations are going to rise in the sense that instead of 4,000 students, you will have 40,000 students. So where is the employability? So once my turn comes again, because that is one area where the employability comes with innovation in rural and hinterland India, that we will talk about later given the chance.
Dr. Bhatnagar, you very beautifully amplified a very, very important point, that the choices made increases responsibility. So if the system is moving from bureaucracy to democracy, there's a lot of responsibility that each one who are the stakeholders of the NEP have to focus upon. So, Sir has made another very relevant point which talks about technology. And technology has been a booster, especially amid the pandemic. We learned that technology has let the education flow in spite of we being distanced by physically. So, keeping that momentum going forward, I think Mr. Nilay would be the best person, because Sir is from Canada. He has an exposure of education on a very global scenario, and his interventions into artificial intelligence and machine learning could maybe throw a light as to how this digital divide, how this disparity of education, how this knowledge being converted from information to knowledge through these platforms can be further reverberated in the system.
Sure, that's an interesting topic, and first of all, thank you for the opportunity and thank you for inviting me. One point that I would like to mention, that technology you talked about, and there were a few examples that a few points that were mentioned earlier about the need for multidisciplinary approach, the changes because of COVID and how that has affected the adoption of technology and digital disruption, causing changes in the education system. Now, if you think about the changes in the education system from historical perspective, you'll find that it has modified quite a bit. There are certain pillars right now which are relevant for education. People go for education in higher institutions because of 3 reasons, primarily. One is knowledge. Second is accreditation or certification. I'm an IITian, or I'm an IIM graduate, I'm a Harvard graduate. And the third is experience. Now, if you look historically, it was just knowledge. Gurukuls did not issue accreditations. Then, accreditations were added on because of the challenges and making sure quality is there, and that's why accreditations were added on. Nowadays, experience is being added on. What we do not know is what will be added upon in the next 10 years, 25 years. These are the three top reasons right now why anyone seeks education, and that's what most institutions focus on. But what will be the fourth one in the next 10 years, 50 years, we don't know. And the challenge is, for any education policy, most policymakers or thinkers or advisors think about what's the challenges facing us right now and maybe in the near future, in the next 10 or 20 years. They don't think about how the system could be modified so that it adapts to any new challenges which we do not know about at all in the next 25 years, 30 years. And that is a big challenge. Now, coming to AI and ML, often people don't understand, AI is often a buzzword right now, artificial intelligence, but people call it a fundamental shift. The thing that internet did, 30 years, 25 years ago, computers did 50, 40 years ago. AI is considered to be that big a change. And you might wonder why. The difference is, right now, or until, say, 10 years ago, technology was primarily used to access data, slice and dice it, analyze it, and then it was passed on to a human to make decisions based on it. What AI does, or is capable of doing, is making decisions instead of getting a human to make those. So if you think about that, that changes a lot of things. And from an education perspective, what does it change? Now, what are some of the decisions that we educators or administrators of education do? We grade. Now AI can do that. We grade papers, we grade exams. Now artificial intelligence can do that. We create content. AI can do that. We create, we create outcomes. Okay, this is what the learning path should be. We talked about, some of the panelists talked about students, given a choice. And that's very important. AI would just accelerate that because AI can basically, for an educator, say, a 3,000 people student university, for a university to assess each and every student at an individual level and identify the right paths for them is impossible. It's too expensive. And AI can do that much cheaply and much better. So if you think about where does AI lead to in the next phase of education and how does that affect the policies, first is understanding what it is capable of and understanding how it can make the lives of students and educators equally better. And then second is being able to adapt to future changes. And I think that's one of the key pillars of technology affecting education. Now we talked about Jamboard, Mural. These are all, again, 3 years ago, no one knew about them, okay? And if you were to make a policy or release a policy in 2018 or 2019, probably they would not have planned for COVID. So, you cannot blame, if someone drafted a policy then, you cannot blame them. But what we can do is make sure that the system and the new policy is implemented in such a way that it's not too bureaucratic in the sense that it does not constrain from future changes. And I think that should be the key pillar of the education policy. And I think there are some aspects, and specifically like I talked about the point number 10, on institutional restructuring and consolidation on the NEP document caught my eye quite significantly because it kind of addresses that in a pretty interesting way, by changing some of the structures and organizing universities in research-focused universities versus teaching-focused universities. And that is kind of an interesting perspective, that I think the NEP does include. So, with that, I'd like to pass it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nilay. So this black box of adaptability, you gave a very good solution. The technology in itself could be that scope of being able to change and being able, both for the trainers as well as for the learners. So technology could play a very, very vital role to be able to help bridge the gap of change which is required for the NEP. So my next question is to Dr. V. Kalaiselvan, sir, which I've been digesting for a while, you being from the Ministry of Health, and it said that educators cannot be true educators if they teach only the mind, there is something called the heart which needs to be trained as well. So, evolving from this, if you were to see NEP as a holistic education which empowers a student right for a scintillating mind with the heart, kind of a unison, do you see that this could be an impactful way of nurturing a better education and a knowledge system? If you would like to ponder on anything that you would like to express on this fact, that would be like a point of significance to students also to take away.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for inviting me for this very important discussion. As per this National Education Policy 2020, we have a lot of scope for preventive health care, which is one of the very important component given in the National Education Policy 2020. So what do we understand about preventive health care? There are a lot of activities which we have to do under this preventive health care. It cannot be the responsibility of only students or only the responsibility of community to do it or government to do it. When it comes to the preventive health care, I don't know how many of you can able to explain this preventive health care. There are a lot of things are coming up now. Medication error, which already the education, our curriculum, I am very specific to the pharmacy curriculum I'm talking. We did a lot of work in the medication error monitoring and other things. By looking at the contemporary challenges, many things are coming up in the preventive health care, like monitoring the adverse drug reaction, which is one of the very important tool, which ensure or promote the patient safety. So this is a very important step taken by the National Education Policy. Preventive health care needs to be given, and of course the pharmacovigilance also part of this National Education Policy, that is prevention of adverse drug reactions, which needs to be evolved from the community level. Actually, what I would like to say, currently this practice is evolved or practiced at the level of multi-level hospital or super specialty hospital only, not from the primary health center level. So I think under this National Educational Policy, preventive health care is very well addressed. But here again, the issues, how we are going to implement it actually, effective implementation, the concept or the theme is effective implementation of this National Education Policy. When it comes to the effective implementation, already my panelists spoke a lot about the skills, technical skills and soft skills are required. But here, how we are going to prepare our students to do this, how we are going to cope up the students. Already the Pharmacy Council of India they have taken the step forward. They have included this in their syllabus also, like monitoring these things. But now second question comes, how our teachers are going to train them. Really, do we give an adequate knowledge and skills to the students? Teachers, that is second thing. And third level, institutional level integration with the government agencies, as well as other organizations, those who are engaged in this practice. That is also needs to be addressed. So according to me, yes, this is very well addressed. This National Education Policy is very well covered all the perspective with respect to preventive health care and also integrated approach. Not only medicine, now if you look at the contemporary challenges, there are other medical products also needs to be covered under the preventive care. Preventive care, apart from medicine, vaccines are there, medical devices are there. Even traditional system of medicine also needs to be focused under this umbrella. So many things to be done, and I think it is doable with the integrated approach by continuously upgrading the knowledge and skills of the students as well as faculty. I think it is doable. It can be implemented effectively.
Thank you, sir. So your discussion has been into the health aspect which has been taken care of NEP. So, sir, a very important word that you ended was faculty and preachers. So it said that Robert Frost had said that the teachers are not preachers, they are awakeners. So in this scope of NEP, how do you think that the teachers as liberators, as the torch bearers of education, what is the perspective from a teacher or faculty per se in this NEP as to what is in store for them, and how much of liberty of expansion in education would the educational institutions provide them? So, since you are the administrative heads, so you could be one of the main pioneers to help the teachers become relearners, re-educate, and provide them a medium for an ecosystem where they develop and they make the students develop as well. So I leave this question open to the panelists. Whoever feels that they would be able to comment on it would be able to do that. So my question says, before going to students, what is it that the educators have in it, and how a reformation by the educational institutions for the educators could help to leverage NEP back to the students? Sir, please.
This is also connected to the point which I as to how what do you do with this 40,000 rural semi-urban newly educated people. Coming from DRDO, I had this advantage and disadvantage that innovation is not given any marks there. कोई credit नहीं है because this is the only thing we are supposed to do and we are paid for that. So it's a a common occurrence for us. Now, with this thing is in mind, I'll give you a few examples which we have collated, some sort of a research, products. I'm talking about products now, which many of you might not even feel that they are innovations, but if you think about it, they are generating self-employment to 40,000 people when we're talking about. So we have collected these 70 products, and we have converted into a small course for startups, basically 1 or 2 weeks. And people, students who have, let's say, inclination in these, we transfer our innovation to them to develop these products, product development, scale up, and commercialization will be sitting at the back. I'll give you a few examples. A few of the mundane ones I'll tell you initially. अभी हम लोग जब यहाँ आए तो आप लोगों ने हमें डेटॉल का सैनिटाइजर दिया. Now, what this sanitizer contains are two chemicals which are known to us for last 30 years, and these are beyond all patents now. Now, as a, let's say, routine, we are using it, Dettol sanitizer or anything like this in cities, and we will not change. But rural and semi-urban India, why they have to use Dettol GMP-made thing, when the same chemicals which are made in Gujarat at a cost of 100 times lesser, be called hand cleaners, because if they are hand washed, then you go for a GMP certificate. Otherwise, these are hand cleaners. Same thing, it can go to the hinterlands. And it's our farmers, it's people who live in these areas need these products. And some of the soils who get, let's say, educated in Lloyd, they go back and open these things which are not going to cost more than 3 lakh or 5 lakhs for cottage industry. This is one example. Second is again Colgate. So what is the, let's say, innovation? So innovation we added to toothpaste was that as these things can be made by Dr. Popli, these contains antivirals. What we did was we took a few samples of RT-PCR positive people as well as samples, and they were made to go for toothpaste, and then again we took the throat samples and they were negative. Now that doesn't mean anything because ultimately a virus also resides in nasopharynx, but you could by simple using antiviral toothpaste could reduce at least 50% of the viruses which are residing in your throat area. So this goes for innovation. Another example I'll give you in terms of the Dettol which we are talking about. What we innovated is, in fact, it was one of the DRDO students who is now with Lloyd. This is a product, not mine. That this Dettol is 1 or 2% chemical, rest is water. So we just made a gel or powder out of it so that people can add boiling, boiled water at the time of use, and it becomes Dettol gel at the time of use. So transport costs reduces, it becomes useful for the army and paramilitary or tourists. So this is small things which probably will not even fetch you a patent. But then these are good enough to open up industries all over the places. 2 दिन पहले, this is more in fun. 1 week back, when ginger was not in the market, it was costing about 150 rupees in our locality. उसके बाद अब ginger आ गया, then I just looked कि YouTube में क्या लिखा है. So we found 3 claims. One said they can make it at 20 rupees per kg. One said they can make it 5 rupees per kg. One said they can make it rupees 1 per kg. And they, as videos, they were giving the method. Now, I'll just request you to go through it, and with your insight as teachers, you will understand that truth is somewhere in between. And you will develop a method yourself that at least for about 10 rupees per kg, you will be able to get it made, which we have in fact started. So this is not an innovation, but the point is you get with a technology which is not using soil. One is aquaponics, one is hydroponics, one is God knows what. But once you go through those videos, you will make a let's say analysis, which we call as knowledge, and you develop a method to make adrak at rupees 10 per kg. So there are 70 such things. These are low-end things. There are high-end things also, but all within food license or Ayush license, which could be useful for the society. And instead of filing patents, we are giving it as startup ideas. So innovation we have to do as mentors, and we have to pass on rather than sitting over those patents and everything.
Very rightly said, Dr. Bhatnagar, that faculty needs to move their faculty towards more of knowledge creation rather than subject-specific knowledge. I think Popli ma'am wanted to speak something. Is it? Yeah. So, Nilay sir, maybe after that.
I think I'll go back to the question, and very relevantly, Dr. Aseem added the point of innovations. But there is one point which I was hearing Nilay pointed out. So he said that when we're talking about the choice-based credits to the students, and you asked about what is there should be a faculty. So I think in a faculty also, if you're giving a choice to them, not everybody wants to be innovator, not everybody wants to do one kind of a thing, or do a research. So then if the choice is given or the passion is given, I think they become a better teachers. Because some who has been interested in research, somebody who is researches in a good communicator or some connector to our industry will be giving a kind of a relevant rather than asking everyone to do this thing. So that flexibility also can be added into our institutions. While AICTE is given the norms that the professor should take 14 hours or 12 hours. So when you look back, what are they doing in the rest of hours? So either they are doing a research, if it's a research-based university. If it's not a research-based, they are also preparing themselves for the students, right? So there is always, we have seen there is, if you talk to some of the young teachers, say, and when they are looking after their home, they say that we don't have any time for a research. But still, they do some kind of a research and produce papers which is of non-quality. And they try to file a patent without even understanding what the patent is. And the numbers very important for them, that 5 patents, 6 patents, 2 patents. Maybe in a lifetime, if you are achieve one product and able to commercialize one product is good enough. But that the number race goes on because one teacher is doing, so another is doing, or making a co-guide or making an added. And you see the number of the list in the research papers is going for 10 teachers or 12 teachers. But how this education system is making a better students may not be, because that's a question which is every faculty need to ask and we need to address.
So it's a very beautiful thought, ma'am, that you enlightened, that it's the learner-centric. If it's a choice-based learning, the people who are educators would also have to reorient themselves to be able to accommodate this magma of learnings to whom they would be going back to. So moving on to Mr. Nilay, you wanted to speak something? I think with Mr. Nilay, we'll be ending the session. We've already, sir, you are going
just
to
a quick
end the
one.
session.
First of all, great point. How does the research outcomes affect the students and learning? I think that's a core aspect. And I think often, and I talk about commercialization a lot, often in commercialization that gets lost. And I think it's a great point. And, I was just going to comment on what Dr. Bhatnagar commented was, the DRDO example of the 70 innovations. That's actually, that's like a model for how multidisciplinary activities could be followed as well. Because researchers would develop things in their labs. how to bring that to the market, that's where was the business school would come in. Now, if you walk around, there are a lot of poster presentations, there are a lot of technologies being presented. If there are business school in the audience, I would suggest go out, see these and see, can you implement that in the market? And then try to inspire the researcher to do that and see if you can do that. We actually used to do that on a regular basis at University of Toronto, in the commercialization sector. And we had quite a few, we had an entire event around it, and I won't go into details, but there's quite a few amazing outcomes that came out. Maybe not as, at the grassroots level that you mentioned, but, there are some, for instance, we adapted one software which was developed for, it was kind of a social networking kind of software, an algorithm for managing a network. And that was adapted to actually implement in the power grid to manage the data sharing between different nodes of the power grid. And a business person, a business student who actually said that, okay, the same thing could be adopted there, and then they spend like 6 more months, changing the software to do that. So that's where multidisciplinary comes in, and that's where, I really like the example that you shared, and I think that should be, examples like these should be taken as a model to kind of bring it forward for the, for the implementation strategies about, for the NEP.
Thank you for such a wonderful summary of our discussion today. I would like to thank the panelists a lot, because everybody from their own diverse areas of indulgence have been able to put forward their views. And the last thing that I would like to say is that NFP is a reformation because it teaches us not about what to learn, but how to learn. And if we learn how to learn, I think we have got the bullseye to what learning is altogether. I hope students, you were able to make out a little on as to what the NEP has in store for you, a little for the faculty to what it has in store for you. And I hope this session would take forth and take another league of discussions in the next 2 days, because a beautifully fabricated preposition like this should be harnessed and welcomed with open arms by whoever is the stakeholder, and try to make whatever changes they would like to in their own small ways or big ways in order to make India a global knowledge economy. With this, I would like to end the session. Thank you for your patient listening. Thank you, Mr. Venkat. We lost him virtually. Thank you so much for being in the session today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Neetu ma'am. And